Hey folks, David Stewart here. I am back again with Brian Niemeier, sci-fi writer and editor extraordinaire. And I don't know what we're going to talk about today, a bunch of things. Brian has another crowdfunding thing for one of his mecha novels. If you haven't checked those out or you're not aware of what he does as an author, one of the things he does is write mecha novels. And I think his usual tagline is, it's the best mecha anime you've never seen. So if you're a fan of those, which I am, and I like both kinds. You know, I like the Japanese stuff as well as the more BattleTech-y, stompy stuff in terms of fiction as well as games. So check those out. How you doing today, Brian?
I'm doing fantastic. I am pleased to announce here on Newpub Talk that Comet Frame XCSS just smashed its third stretch goal. So you guys out there, you did that. And as a reward, the Comet Frame Exceed short story collection is now available.
Yeah, let me go ahead. Let me see if I could pop that up on screen share here so we can take a look at that.
Yep, and this belongs to the fans. The fans voted for it. They voted on the title, which I will also announce is officially Comet Frame Exceed Classified Intel.
All right, there it is. Bam. Okay. Classified intel. Now, I think one of these, isn't one of these in the Corona Chan?
One of them is.
Yeah. It's the first story, in which this is turning 1 year. This is like the 1 year anniversary of Corona Chan spreading the love. The number one sci-fi fantasy whatever pulp anthology we threw together just on a whim in a couple of days last year. Everybody threw in a story and it turned out really good. And you can still get the physical as well as the ebook right now. So please do go ahead and check that out if you can. That's free. It's free on Amazon.
Yeah, totally recommended. And yes, David, you are correct. Comet Frame Exceed Anacyclosis is in Corona Chan. And that was one thing that the readers brought to me, which was, hey, we know you've written a bunch of Comet Frame Exceed short stories. Like you published Anacyclosis in Corona Chan, and then there were former backer exclusives, which for the last 2 years had only been available to the diehard folks, steel-eyed mecha men who backed the campaigns. But how do new folks get up to speed on this stuff? And I'm like, hey, you're right, that is a good question. So I've collected all of them, all extant Comet Frame Exceed short stories into this book, and there's a lot of material there. It's going to be almost 200 pages by my estimate, so definitely novel length is what you get.
Yeah, so that's definitely going to be a good value. I want to plug one of my things real quick before I go further. So I got hardbacks available for Water of Awakening, which this is what the hardback will look like. I very slightly tweaked the back so the back is more symmetrical, because this is kind of unpaved territory for me, is designing the hardbacks. And there's been a couple things to figure out with the Amazon way of doing it. So those are available now. Needle Ash will be hopefully available tomorrow. I have to iron out a couple of things with that formatting to get that to look appropriate. But anyway, you can get that now. And so these are available, and I'll hopefully have some content coming for how to design these laminate hardbacks, which you can actually do through Amazon. Limited program right now. It's technically a secret beta or something like that, but I'll show you how to do it, because there's no templates or anything. So you have to learn to measure things in your program.
Wow.
Which it's something to do. You can do it with a calculator and their guides. They have like a little guide to help you figure out where things are going to cut off. And it comes out slightly different than what they say. So that's the main thing.
Well, that is available. Yeah, that's exciting. I was really excited to see you going through that process and reporting your results.
If you have a paperback cover for something, it's actually pretty easy to convert it to hardback.
Really?
Yeah, it's really not hard. The main thing is there's a whole bunch of extra around the edges for where they wrap the image and tuck it in. So I'm going to zoom back in here so people can see it really easily. So basically, the way this isn't a jacket or anything, but the image continues underneath this white end paper. You have to have something there, but you actually don't have to have your cover image extending too far past what's there. You can just put black on it, and for the most part, it works. The way I design mine is that I always have bleed off the edge of extra image. So the bleed off the edge for the paperback, you just have to do a little bit more for the hardback, and you're pretty much good to go on one of these. And the barcode is in a different place. So if you're like me and you have a bunch of stuff down here in the corner, that stuff has to get moved over because the barcode is slightly moved over compared to the paperback. But otherwise, it's the same dimensions as a paperback cover, and you can just use the interior from your paperback interior, and it all works. So if you're already in the paperback, workflow, then it's really not going to be too much difficult to do the hardback through Amazon Direct. And generally, I like the Amazon being able to sell print-on-demand stuff through Amazon because it's a lot more convenient for me. It's a lot more convenient for customers, less risk involved. And also, they generally do a little bit better cut of the money than, say, going through Lulu or someone like that. But I would go through, say, Lulu if I were doing like a large-scale crowdfund. Like maybe if I was crowdfunding, like I might crowdfund book 3 to get it illustrated, like have Jesse White or someone illustrate it. So to pay him to illustrate it, and then we'll have like full-sized hardbacks of the first 3 and mail those out. But that's less convenient once you get out of the bulk territory. It's a little bit better to do the Amazon thing. Then people have the option of collecting the hardback if they want.
Well, that hardback looks slick, man. And that's talking to the guy who taught me everything I know about cover design.
Yeah. So Brian's got some great covers here too. And I really like the covers of the Mecha books, and especially the new covers. They just have a great dynamic contrast to them. I love the colors on the Combat Freight Exceed SS because you have this great contrast of the yellows and the blues. Those just look really good together. It's a very colorful color, but it still doesn't look like just like a splattering of color. The colors are a little more isolated in their use, so that you have a feeling like this part of the image is blue and this part is more white and this part is orange and teal. So it kind of goes pretty well together. And this one, I like the blue one a lot too. Just blue and orangish pink. You really don't need a lot of colors to get the cover to look really excellent. So I did put out a video today on how like marketing has destroyed creativity, at least in the advertising space. And
Larry's outdid himself on Double S. I got to agree.
Yeah. And so, you put out a blog article this week that I shared that was on, the death of outrage, or, outrage marketing and how that works. And this channel has attracted people through outrage marketing unintentionally at first, because I just wanted to make a video about how much I hated the new Star Wars movie. I just wanted to do that. And it ended up becoming a thing that like grew the channel. But there are definitely limits to that. So why don't we talk a little bit about marketing? Because I know people in the chat are going to be interested in talking about marketing, especially people who are prospective artists, prospective writers, things like that. How do you get your book to be viewed by people who will hopefully buy it? So why don't we start with the outrage marketing? What did you talk about this week?
Yeah, this week I had a blog post that was based on my own experience, but also conversations with some of the marketing gurus I know, guys way smarter than me, who aren't just in books, but are just killing it in other industries too, like in tech or just general retail markets or like drop shipping and stuff. And like these are guys who make the successes of like the biggest folks in our scene look kind of shabby by comparison. Not to throw shade at anybody.
Yeah,
but they've been in this game a long time. Because I always try to seek out. I try to find like the biggest guy, like the top guy in the field I could get access to, and just pick his brain and shut up and listen. Just keep my mouth shut and my ears open and just sponge whatever I can off him. So I brought up like how back in the day, like during Sad Rabid Puppies and during Hugos and stuff, you know, I would like bait John Scalzi, do my Scalzi attack ads, right?
Yeah.
Like the pink SF versus blue SF stuff. And yeah, you know, that got some eyeballs on my work early on. And what this buddy of mine said, I found, frankly, cognitus generating at first. Like, it just smacked me upside the head. But then I realized it was because, you know what? He's right. And what he said was that, yes, the outrage marketing, the e-drama, it'll get you attention. I mean, it works at first.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the inherent limitation. When you go down that route, you set a little egg timer. Okay, the clock to irrelevance automatically starts ticking, because how does outrage marketing work? How does it work?
Well, people are interested in, you know, let's call it brand X.
Sure.
And so they are upset that brand X does something bad because it's owned by evil corporation Y. And so they go and they find people who are expressing their opinion in a resonant manner, and they like that person, and therefore they may invest in that person's book. On the flip side, the people who are upset about it will then actually spread the message as well, because they will, you know, quote tweet and do things like that. And so the message ends up spreading, whether it's positive or negative. People who are upset about it will still feed into the algorithm by clicking that video and writing a long essay in the comment section about how evil or how great Corporation Y is and how awesome Brand X still is. That's certainly how outrage marketing has worked for my channel and for my brand. But I do think that there's an egg timer there, because what happens sooner or later, you're out of things to talk about in that area.
Right. And if, like us, like you said, you hate Force Awakens, you hate Mouse Wars, and so do I. The problem with kind of piggybacking off that is, well, if your stated aim is to destroy it or propose an alternative to it, but if your marketing is entirely driven by being parasitic on it, then it actually creates a built-in conflict of interest where, well, you better hope Mouse Wars never goes away and Kathleen Kennedy keeps producing bad movies for you to rag on, because otherwise your whole marketing approach goes down the drain. So you become like, if you're into politics, what the GOP is to the Democrats now, where they're just their shadow.
Yeah.
Right? They need them to survive. They're the parasite on the host. Or like, you sign up to join the Globetrotters.
The show becomes the show becomes the conversation and not the product. So you make your show the conversation about the product, not the product. Now, yeah, and at a certain point, you're aware that it doesn't go anywhere. You know, like there's a whole bunch of Mouse Wars channels. There's a whole bunch of channels that literally their entire content is complaining about Star Wars. And it's kind of funny because when what was the Rise of Skywalker came out, I hadn't talked about Star Wars like that I barely talked about it. People came on, they're like, all you talk about is Star Wars. I'm like, I came out with something like 400 videos this year, like more than one per day at some points, you know, and I didn't talk about Star Wars at all in those videos, but you didn't watch any of them because you only care about clicking on the video about someone hating on Star Wars. So the perception is that all I do is do content about Star Wars, when I'm doing, you know, tons of videos that have nothing to do with Mouse Wars. And I didn't talk about Star Wars really at all, except in passing on like live streams and stuff, or just as part of like, you know, story discussion, you know, okay, if people know who Han Solo is, so we'll talk about a Han Solo like character for the entirety of 2020. And people didn't even, you know, and it didn't really hurt me. In fact, it kind of helped me because I developed a better audience that was more interested in more diverse topics like gaming and science fiction and things like, in general, science fiction, not just the science fiction, which is Star Wars. So you kind of have to get away from that eventually. But yeah, there's whole channels that's all they do. And I see them talk about some sort of like secret civil wars inside of Disney over, it's like Kathleen Kennedy is not getting fired, guys. You're just imagining this drama at this point. You're making crap up because there's no new Star Wars stuff to dunk on. Or people liked The Mandalorian, so what are you going to do? You're talking about how you liked The Mandalorian as well? No, you got to talk about how Gina Carano got fired for being to the right of Mao. That's what you have to talk about. And you're going to talk about that for as long as you possibly can until the views drop off. And you really got to hope that they keep doing something bad so that you can get in a few more views, because people are not really interested in you. Most of your viewers, that is, are not really interested in you.
Yeah. So I'm looking over your channel right now, just as an example. And you're pretty hot. You're doing pretty well here on YouTube, man. And like, honestly, so you've got like a general business advice video pretty recently that got 2K views. Not bad. But then, yeah, you go down and your video on Gina Carano got like 3 times that. Well, what's the reason? Well, it's because you're using keywords in like the title and the metadata that YouTube likes right now. Okay, yeah. It's not even necessarily the content. But then, I mean, like your Pod Future video has even more. So
yeah, I got a huge number of views from making a video on like use a straight razor or something, right? You don't always know what's going to cue into that that resonance. And we talked about this on Twitter as well, that there's the way that algorithms work. And you actually wrote about this on your website too, so I recommend people go check that out too. I'm trying to remember what you called the article, but it's a good article.
I think it's like
Death Cult Seminaries. I didn't even read this one.
Oh, geez, that one's dark.
Oh yeah. Okay, I know what it's about though. We should talk about that, but let's talk about that in a minute. Yeah, you were talking about basically that like the algorithms are like badly programmed robots, but we don't dare turn them off. There's algorithms that trade stocks, and a lot of people don't realize that a big portion of stock value is basically, I call it resonance. So the way the algorithm works is that if something is popular, it just shows more of that to everyone. That's how viral content ends up working, is that if things are if everyone likes something, then everyone's going to like something. So you show them more and more and more stuff. So you end up with, was it T-Rex? There was some band from the 80s.
Dinosaur Jr.
Dinosaur Jr. That's right. Yeah. Dinosaur Jr. ended up with like a hit song because somebody made a viral video that happened to have their music in it. It's kind of like Rick Astley. Rick Astley is raking in the checks because people used his little Rickroll video as a joke. And the robot doesn't really know that why people like or don't like something or what they're using it for, because it's not a human. It just amplifies things. So I put it's kind of like throwing a pebble in a pond. What happens is people see these big ripples and they're like, well, that's what I need to do. I need to throw pebbles like that. And they throw it in there and then nothing happens. Because while there are these Disney channel, I know I'm going off on a tangent here. Well, there are these Disney Mouse Wars channels that are kind of big. There's also a bunch that are very small and they wonder why nobody watches them. And they're like, I guess my content isn't as good. No, it's because it's a matter of luck. It's randomness. Randomness picked this guy. He ended up a little bit ahead of you. And so the resonance just continues to amplify his videos over everyone else's. And it really has nothing to do with you. It's just the way the robot picked it.
Yeah. Speaking of amplifying, I should point out that statistically, I mean, we use it as shorthand, but randomness doesn't cause anything. Okay. Yes. Randomness is just statistical shorthand for the answer or the cause is so complex, we don't know what it is. Basically, black swan.
Yeah, we're unable to you can't link cause and effect effectively.
Yeah. Oh, well
something caused it, but we call it random because we just don't. There's too many factors at play to figure out exactly. You can't predict it. It's not
right, and you brought up a good point about quality, and this does tie into everything we're saying, which is okay. So let's consider car buying here. So if you've got a nice chunk of change and you're in the market for a car, right, and price is no object, are you going to get the 97 Ford Fiesta or the brand new Mercedes-Benz? It's not a trick question. Like, just which would you get?
I mean, okay, let me hear the setup again, because I would probably choose the cheaper car because that's who I am. But if I could just have either car for free, you'd probably have the Mercedes.
Yeah, price is no object, like blank check.
Yeah. You want the better car.
Yeah, and let's be honest. 99 out of 100 car buyers are going to take the Mercedes under that condition. Okay. Well, now, okay, and that's because there's a quality jump there. But how much more quality do you need to add above a Mercedes to justify a price increase, like a similar price increase between it and the Fiesta? Because at that point, diminishing returns hits you hard once you get to a certain level. So, like, if you're already at the Mercedes level, like, well, okay, well, how about an Aston Martin?
Yeah.
That's a tougher choice. You can't just go to Aston Martin territory. You've got to go to McLaren territory to make it the same no-brainer decision. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's got to be like, do you want a Mercedes or do you want like an Indy car with all the parts forever?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll take an Indy car because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and authors, or really any kind of creator, musicians, anybody, faces that same kind of diminishing return. So there are people who say that, oh, well, look at how horribly written like Twilight is, or even the top indie books and like YA are. It's people just mashing their foreheads on a keyboard, right? So quality doesn't matter. Well, it does.
Yes.
And it's not even that it doesn't matter as much as people think. It doesn't matter as much where. So it's a question of where the quality is, not the quantity of quality, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I've done videos on Twilight and why it's actually good. And people who are, you have a mindset where you're like, well, Twilight sucks because the prose is not good compared to John Steinbeck or something, right? Yeah, obviously not. But the quality of what made, at least created the potential for, because anything that you deal with, it's like a potential. So you want to have a high quality book because that's the potential for there. You don't know exactly if it's going to explode or not, but you want to have the potential there. So the quality of Twilight is really in who the book is for, which was originally, young teen girls, how it presented a story that was attractive to them and executed it well, and what it did to execute that story well. And the truth is, it did all of those things well, and it certainly did them good enough to be popular. It had the minimum level of quality there for, popular explosion. If it was written like John Steinbeck, chances are it wouldn't have been as popular because it wouldn't have been as accessible to the market who wanted to read it. That's important.
Right. Yeah.
Now, going to what I was talking about with marketing is that what happens is that people start to copy because they're trying to produce the same effect. So there's a whole genre now of like young adult supernatural romance that's basically trying to ape Twilight. It's built on Twilight. The keyword one of the keywords will always be Twilight. If you're advertising for it or you're setting up an Amazon ad, the keyword's always going to be Twilight in every variation. Twilight, Edward, blah, blah, it's going to be in there because you're trying to signal really hard to people's pre-existing tastes. The thing about Twilight is that the reason it exploded is it got people to read it who didn't have those pre-existing tastes. And this is one of the problems with internet marketing, is that targeted marketing is focused towards what you already know about a person, not what they potentially would like. And so you can't use it. It will not create these big ripples in a pond that are amplified kind of stochastically. If you don't know what stochastic reverb is, this is basically how algorithms work. So you don't see, like, let's say you're looking out at a pond and the pond's rippling because of the wind, right? The wind is producing random, what we would view as random effects. Like if you were God, you could understand the cause and effect of that. But we humans only see the ripples and assume that the wind is acting in some way on them. If you were to amplify all the ripples, you would see a pattern and you'd be able to see better what the wind was. Or if you amplified the wind, you'd be able to see what direction the wind was going in because you'd see the ripples traveling in one direction. That's stochastic reverb. Stochastic being a random or noise. As you add amplification into noise, patterns emerge. And that's the way that the algorithms work on YouTube. The problem is people see the patterns and assume that that's what they need to do when they're looking. They'd have to go back in the past to know what to do ahead of time. So you can't create the next Twilight by writing books exactly like Twilight. All you can do is try to feed into what's already there. In order to write the next Twilight, you have to write something that people don't know they already like. good luck with that. You're not going to be able to accurately predict that. You can just do a best guess is what you can do.
Yeah, there's something else you can do though. You can kind of play. You can kind of get into the middle or near the end of the long tail that process and kind of carve out a niche there because, okay, yeah, you brought up Twilight, great example. Well, it's like right now, the new hotness is like YA lit RPG. Harem was hot there for a while. Space Marine was hot for a while. But I mean, let's use one example: vampires. Who is big that is writing vampires right now?
I don't know anyone.
Nobody. But did all the vampire fans go away? Did everyone just decide, we don't like vampires anymore? Is there no one who wants to read about vampires right now?
I don't think so.
Right. So that's a huge underserved market. So the mistake that authors make all the time is they try to chase the puck, as it's called, right? They look at what's hot and they're like, okay, well, I want to copy that. Just like you said, like everybody wants to copy Harry Potter, everybody wants to copy Twilight. But then after like the big fish have moved on, you've got readers left in the lurch who still like that material, but no one is writing stories like that. So what you should do instead is kind of hop on the previous bandwagon that's underserved, and that's where you've got a chance to really pick up some market share.
Yeah, that's a good point. And one of the things that I think about with this, and this is also kind of true, it's pretty rare. We're not seeing a lot of truly explosive literature things the way we did 10 years ago. I think the market's kind of become diversified to the point where you're not going to see as many. I think the last one I saw was the Hunger Games was like the last like big explosion thing that I saw. And that wasn't even that big. I don't think you're going to see another Harry Potter because there's the infrastructure, the market that created Harry Potter doesn't really exist anymore. Doesn't mean you can't be successful or even super successful, but you're not going to see like an overwhelming everybody read this book kind of thing for a while, I think.
Yeah, just like in music, you're not going to see another biggest band in the world. There's not going to be another Beatles. There's not going to be another U2. There's not going to be another Police, right? That's over. Yeah.
Everything's too fractured. It's too diversified. There's not enough single popular culture to carry that. I mean, the dying throes of popular culture now is like the remnants of Star Wars and Marvel. And, you know, I could see a lot of decrease possibly happening in the next couple of years with the Marvel franchises as there are a lot of fans will still go see it because it's Marvel, but at a certain point, it's going to be like the Alien franchise where it's like, oh, they came out with an Alien versus Predator movie. I really like the first two movies, you know, and then you just won't go to the theater to see them anymore. Or like Highlander or something like that. Yeah, there's still Highlander stuff that comes out every once in a while, but you know, it's mostly in the lower levels of budget and things like that.
Yeah.
So, I think authors are often trying to. Now, here's what I was going to say. If you're chasing the puck and you have the time and the energy to jump on whatever the latest trend is and write a book in like 2 weeks that you can then release into that, you can make a lot of money. Most people don't have that time and energy and honestly the skill to be able to put out a book in 2 weeks to chase a trend. But that's kind of the advice that a lot of these Kindle gurus come out with because they have the time to do that. If you're starting out, it's better to write the things that you're really passionate about and figure out how to find the fans for that genre and that specific thing. It's better to dedicate yourself to that than to try to say, well, like writing to market, being so focused on writing to market that you are going to, well, the newest hotness is this book. I'm going to write a book just like that and market it to people who like that book because when they finish it, they're going to want to read another book that's just like that book. Here we go.
Yeah. To springboard off that, what I'm seeing a lot of among authors is high time preference, where they're thinking extremely short term, like, okay, here's the newest fad, here's the newest outrage. I'm going to jump in on that, hitch my wagon to it, extract what attention and money I can from it, and then get out, and then wash, rinse, repeat. And again, all you're doing is you're setting a series of egg timers, guys, and just might as well be putting them like on top of your monitor or something. It's like, okay, here's my Star Wars egg timer, here's my Marvel egg timer, here's my comic, like Trump supporting comic book creator X getting canceled egg timer.
Yeah.
Here's my Twilight egg timer. What you want to be looking at is you want to ask yourself, what are my long-term goals for this business? Because as you've said, you need to get out of the waging mentality and into the capital side mentality. You're making investments with each book.
Yes. So that I'll briefly touch on that. So the wage earner mentality, the employee mindset is like, I'm going to work for 8 hours and get paid a certain amount per hour, and therefore I'll make a certain amount of money. It doesn't work that way in the creative sphere, and it doesn't work that way if you have a business. The work comes up front and the payoff comes later. So if you're going to approach a content strategy, it's kind of the same way. You know, what am I going to get views for this week or today? And what am I going to get views for years down the road? Because one of my most popular videos is, what's the difference between a classical and a flamenco guitar? People have been searching for that for 7-8 years. And so I have the most popular video on YouTube with it. That's just how it is. It's just how it ended up. So that was kind of like an evergreen piece of content. But if you want to find fans that are going to be like your long-term audience, you really want to serve them. So I generally say, as a rule of thumb, and I actually have this in the Keys to Prolific Creativity book, I actually have a section on this, is that you want to have a balance between what I call negative content and content which serves people's interests more directly. Positive content like guides, talking about books you like, whatever it's going to be.
Show us the book.
You want to have a balance. So yeah, Keys to Prolific Creativity. It's in this chapter. I'm trying to think which chapter it is. I don't remember. I think it's in the professional mindset. So I have this thing where, like, some of my schedules is, this week I came out with one video that was like outrage marketing. And then the rest of the videos were things people like. So you pull in some extra people with outrage marketing. Maybe they follow up, they figure out that you're talking about stuff that they like. Then you don't need to talk about how bad Mouse Wars is. You just talk about the things that they like, or you talk to them about the messages that resonate with them, or you give them the advice, the know-how to do things that they want to do. And that's how you end up converting somebody from a casual viewer into somebody who's a fan, someone you have a relationship with. The relationship is really big. That's the big thing about social media, is that people can talk to me and I can talk back to them. It's not like a published newspaper article that you passively read and maybe you're angry enough to write a letter to the editor or something. But
Yes. And that's really the secret, because I'm not saying don't do outrage marketing at all. I'm saying, just be aware, you're setting an egg timer. You need to make the transition David talked about from negative to producing positive content before it goes off. Okay. So, and Dave does this really well. So here's a question for you. What brand is your water heater? Without looking.
I actually don't know.
Right. Neither do I. And I doubt anyone in the chat knows either. Okay. What brand is it?
Unless it recently went out.
Yes, exactly. Oh, yeah, you're getting a bit ahead of me, but you know what I'm talking about. What brand is your TV, your main TV in the living room?
It's a Sony.
Yeah. Notice how you interact with both all the time. Like, how often do you use hot water?
Yeah, you use hot water constantly.
Why do you know what brand your TV is, but you don't know what brand your water heater is?
Because Sony puts its brand right up front on everything.
Bingo. And that is what you're doing on this YouTube channel. That's what every smart author or creator will do. Be the TV, guys. Okay? And where this analogy applies is both the TV and the water heater produce positive content, right? They both give you things you enjoy. The thing is, though, the water heater would be like a high conscientiousness, like low profile, reliable performer, right? And like you said, David, you only interact with it when something goes wrong. So the only time you interact with it is a negative experience, when you interact with it directly, okay? Whereas the TV, you turn on, you get a dopamine hit, and there's that Sony logo right there, to subtly associate that dopamine hit you get with that brand. And that is what you want to do. So you want to deliver high quality, or at least minimum viable quality, and you want to put your brand all over it. So people think, wow, I just watched a David Stewart video. I just read a Brian Niemeier book. I got warm fuzzies, and I know why. Or at least my brain does. That is how you build a loyal, engaged customer base.
Yeah. So yeah, you got to have it's about how you, so marketing is in fact, let's talk a little bit about marketing specifically. Marketing, as you know, involves a couple of things, right? You have to get somebody's attention. That's the first thing. Now, you can do that a variety of ways. There's a bunch of different avenues to do that. You can make content that gets their attention through all the means of social media, like making a video or writing blog articles, having a viral Twitter post or something. You can get people's attention. That's the first thing that you have to do, and you have to figure out how to do that. That's why I talk about book covers so much. Is a good book cover is an ad. It's an ad for your book. It is telling somebody, pay attention to this. This has things in it that you will like. So if you look at the cover of this, it's like, oh, there's a girl with a sword and some magic. It's like, this image is just there to sell you on the idea of what's in the book, get your attention. Then what you do is you follow up with something that is designed to tell somebody this thing is for you, and it has things in it that you will like, and here's what's in it. You basically make a promise to them of what's going to be in it, and then you hope that they'll buy it, and then you're delivering on the promise with the story. Then they're going to want to read the next story. So you build a relationship with the customer by delivering them a good product, which makes them want to continue to buy products from you. This is basic book marketing, but it works that way really with everything. You have to get people's attention first. So book covers get their attention and shows them what's going to be in the book. And if that's something that they want in a book, then they're going to want to look deeper. And if it's something they don't want in a book, or somebody who doesn't like fantasy is not going to see this and be like, well, I want to see that. They could be like, oh, it looks like some magic and stuff. I don't want that. I want spaceships. So they would obviously be better looking at the spaceship cover, right? They'd see one of Brian's covers and be like, Soul Cycle, I got to click that. That looks cool. You're making a promise to them. It's going to be that way with pretty much everything. So when you're marketing yourself, you got to get attention. You can get that negative attention, but then you want to make a promise. On my channel, there's going to be other things that you want to view or talk about or interact with me regarding, or on my blog or wherever you're choosing to make your content. And that's the follow-up. That's the come deeper, take another look. If people take a deeper look at it, they like what they see, they're going to stick around. And then you're going to develop a relationship with them, a customer relationship. And the last thing I'll add is that one of the things that I think is kind of sad is there's a jaded view of what a customer and, say, a proprietor is in modern America, where people are so used to things like Best Buy, like big box stores preceding the internet. They view businesses as faceless, kind of nothing entities that are, maybe out to con them or something like that. It used to be you knew the person who was selling you your groceries. You had a grocer. You knew the people at the grocery store. I still know the people at my grocery store because I live in a small town. But nice. You knew the people who are delivering your goods and services. You have a relationship with you. They're your neighbors and your friends. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's not a weird thing. That's a normal thing. So developing relationships with your customers, that is a normal thing. That's not a weird thing.
All right. There's Walmart doesn't sponsor the local like junior football team or anything, right?
Yeah, it's the local pizzeria that does that.
Yeah, and
it makes your pizza.
Yeah, that's one thing that we lost, is that's going away. Mm-hmm.
And this is the bigger political conflict now. I've kind of hammered this the last couple of weeks, but I'll hammer it again. The big political conflict is not conservative versus liberal. That ship has sailed, and that's no longer really applicable. Same thing with socialist versus capitalist. It doesn't really make sense given what's going on. It's really the imperial, the large scale versus localist, the smaller scale. And so the localist is where you have family, extended family, church, your church community, or your parish community, local stores. That's localist. Local laws, local culture, localism versus imperialism, which is this large amorphous blob kind of ruling over everybody and dictating lots of things that people don't want, giving them lots of things that people don't want. So in the future, the push for localism should be more, you want to go to your local store, not just because of some, because it's close, but because Bob, your neighbor, runs that local store and you have a relationship with him. And so that promotes the local thing. Because I live out in the country, there's a lot of local stuff here. The local feed store, there's a local hardware store. There's a lot of local stuff still.
Yeah, well, it's what Catholic social teaching would call solidarity and subsidiarity, right? Those are the principles involved. And yeah, when they get out of whack, you wind up with cultural imbalances like we have now.
Yeah. I want to get this here. I wonder if they ever discuss or teach this marketing stuff in an MFA program. I'm not aware of one that does, but there might be one that does out there somewhere. Most MFA programs are not directing you towards the market.
Yeah,
they're directing you towards more academic. Academia is its own stream. So you're going to be evaluating and writing essays about literature, not figuring out how to write and sell a book. The number of English, I've met some English majors who are authors and publish books, but I'd say it's like a tiny minority of them. So, I've met hundreds of English majors, and I've met like one or two of them that have written and published a book.
Yeah, it's weird how few aspiring authors get this, but don't look at academics. Look at the biggest people in your field and do what they do. How many number one best-selling authors have MFAs? That's all you need to know about the value of an MFA program. Like, that's not going to help you become a successful author.
Yeah. But looking at how other people achieve success will give you a roadmap. Now, you can't. I think a lot of people naively think, well, if I just do the things that this person did, I'll have success. Not necessarily. There's a survivor's bias, but there's always going to be general principles about story writing, about how you present yourself, that I think do apply and do create, maybe, I'm not going to call them necessary conditions, but conditions which are going to be baseline for the potential for you to be successful. So you're usually dealing with potential. Like, you're probably not going to be successful if you write, completely unreadable garbage. It's very unlikely. It has to be like a baseline level of competency there. But you may want to look at how other people achieve success by writing things that people liked to read rather than writing things that academics like to read. Do you know what I mean? Right. Like, Twilight is not written for MFA majors to analyze. Now, you could do it, and I've analyzed it, but it's not written that way. It's written for people to enjoy to read. So if you want to be successful in the book market, it's probably a good idea to write books that you think people are going to enjoy reading. Right.
And the survivorship bias you pointed out is largely because of the Pareto distribution at work, where the big fish, the guys who are really crushing it, they're getting 80% of the results from 20% of their effort, but nobody is sure which 20%. So that's why trying to copy exactly what they're doing probably isn't going to get you the exact same results, because your Venn diagrams are overlapping with what they're doing to be successful, but you're probably not capturing all of it. And there are also circumstances that apply to them and not you. Again, it's that randomness or black swan thing. But
yeah, it's kind of like, I think we've talked about this with who is it? Is it Nick Cole who wrote Galaxy's Edge? Those books. He was the beneficiary of some things that were kind of unpredictable. And so some of the advice is going to be very good, and some of it is really not going to apply to you, because if you may make the mistake, if you're successful in thinking everything I did contributed to my success, rather than some things contributed to my success and some things were part of random luck. I'm aware of when luck hits me. I did not plan to create a channel and grow a channel based on not liking Star Wars. I just really wanted to make a video about how I didn't like the new Star Wars movie. I just wanted to do that. And so I got lucky. I got some luck there that I didn't anticipate. And other people probably weren't anticipating it either, because it took a couple weeks for people to really start making videos about how Force Awakens sucks. Whereas I knew that Last Jedi was going to be explosively bad. So I came out with a video the day it came out. And then I just watched a bunch of other videos. Again, a couple weeks later, just kind of say the things I said. But 2 weeks later, right, people were kind of jumping on the bandwagon.
Right. And I see the chat recommending Amanda Palmer. Yeah, I'll check it out. Anybody who's successful at what I want to do. But one thing we can agree on is you don't want to emulate the people who are failing, because there's no shortage of failures who'll just be bitter and who want to tell you, just want to discourage you, like, it's a rigged game. Don't waste your time.
Yeah, you don't want to get, that's the wrong kind of black pill. That's the kind of black pill that makes you stop. Now, some things you should take a black pill and stop. Like if it's like, I'm really enjoying heroin. It's like, you got to know about how bad heroin is. Why are you black pilling me on heroin? Because it's bad for you. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
But this is not one of those cases. One of the first things that I really want to tell, and I was talking to this young man at the gym who recognized me at the gym the other day. Yeah. Now I get recognized in public, which is kind of eerie sometimes. But he's a young musician. I'm like, you got to start by doing it because you really want to do it, and then figure out how you could find different paths of success in there. If you don't, if you're starting with it like I want to be famous, you're always going to be let down because you aren't focused on your actual craft enough to really do it. Viewer says, it's kind of sad because I imagine a lot of those English majors started out with the dreams of writing books someday.
Yeah.
Yeah. This guy, anyway, the guy at the gym, I was like, you're not going to have immediately success. And so if you get blackpilled on the record companies are scams and this and that, you're not going to look for the ways to find success. You're going to give up. And that's not what you should do. You should start by, you do it because you really want to do it. And you're going to find success as much as you can because you love doing it.
Yeah. Let me address what the viewer said. Well, yeah, it's kind of sad because I got conned by grifters in higher ed, but the good news is there's nothing preventing them from writing books.
Yeah.
If you have a dream of writing books like that, that's this other elephant in the room I want to address, which is this idea of the angst-ridden, tortured, aspiring writer.
Yeah.
No, right. you know how you get over that? You're right. You're defined by what you do. Like Aristotle covered this thousands of years ago. You're defined by what you do. If you can write with aptitude and skill, guess what? You're a writer.
Yeah.
So go write. You don't need a class to teach you how to do it.
Yeah. I talk about this in the professional mindset in this book.
Yeah.
Don't call yourself aspiring. Don't call yourself amateur. Don't call yourself these things, or you will be those things. It's going to define what you view as possible. Just be a writer. And I'd say, instead of saying I'm an amateur writer, I'm an aspiring writer, say I'm a new writer. I haven't been doing it long.
Yeah, those are the FA majors. Yeah, they don't want to be working writers. Like they don't want to earn $1 million writing books people want to read. They want validation from a big daddy at a New York publisher is what they want.
Yeah. Yeah. And now the other thing I'll say about English majors is they end up in a conditioned state. And many people do this. And when you walk away from academia, if you have a degree, like I have a music degree, it took kind of years to deprogram myself from what I was conditioned to do as a musician and conditioned to operate, and what modes I was conditioned to operate in. Well, for an English major, you're piped into these literature classes where you read a book that is not a book you read to enjoy, but a book you read because it's important. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I think it's important to read important. I do it all the time for my own professional development and to enrich myself and figure out, maybe I'm not really into Dickens. I don't really like Dickens's writing style.
Right.
Who cares? Dickens was popular, and there's things that have lasted from those books that are worth knowing. So I read Dickens from that perspective. So there's nothing wrong with that inherently. But people get put in this pipeline where we're reading 18th century novels, and then we're going to write essays about it, and we're going to evaluate it. We're going to talk. And so there's all this layers of analysis of works that they don't necessarily read to enjoy. So when it comes time to step out of that mode and to write a book, they're clueless. They're trying to put in all this stuff that they analyze from the books in the English classes into some kind of book. They're like, well, what's my theme? And how do I metaphorically say? It's just write a story. If they had built a track record of success, if instead you had a different program where we're not going to start by evaluating the literature and making you write essays. We're going to start by writing a story and building a record of success, writing stories that you are interested in creating and figuring out, what things you did well, what things you didn't do well. That's how you're going to create a track record of success and develop a mindset that's going to be correct for writing books. It's going to be by writing books, writing stories and writing books, but we don't really do that. And so when people leave the academic sphere, they're just kind of adrift. They have no idea how to sit down and write a story because they've never really written one. They don't really know how to evaluate a story to see if it's effective. They never learned what makes stories. Instead, they focused on why this book was important for the late 18th century British upper middle class woman. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. And look, I'm going to lay it out for you. If you guys in chat want to be writers, I will tell you exactly how to become a professional writer. So first, acquire basic, acceptable English composition and grammar skills. Nowadays, you probably won't get that in any school. But that's why the internet is there. So there are plenty of editor blogs that will teach you basic grammar, spelling, punctuation, etc. Okay, then what you're going to do is you're going to pick a genre. You are going to read 200 books in that genre. If it's science fiction and fantasy, you're going to read books written before 1980.
Yeah.
Okay, you're mainly going to read those. And so looking at Appendix N in the back of the original D&D edition is a great place to start. Gary Gygax lists the books that inspired him. But then you also want to go to what's hot in indie right now. So go to Amazon, look at the top 100 best-selling indie books in your genre and read those. And you're going to read each of these 200 books twice, okay? The first read through, you're going to read it as a reader, just for the experience, just for pleasure, okay? Mm-hmm. Then you're going to leave the book on the windowsill to cool for a bit, go back to it, and then you're going to read it as an author. And you're going to go through it analytically, and whenever you get to a point where like, oh, wow, that was an emotional gut punch, or, oh, wow, I really feel for this character now, you're going to stop and slowly reread the part that made you feel like that and figure out why. And what you've done then is you've taken the tool the author used to make you feel like that, to get that reaction, and you're going to put it in your author toolbox. It's yours now. Now you can do that to other people, because writing is telepathy. Okay. So then you're going to do that with all 200 of those books. While you're doing that, you're going to be writing. You're going to work up to writing 2,000 words every day. Okay? If you do that for a month, you're going to have a novel's worth of material. You're not going to publish that first novel. It's going to suck.
Yeah, the first time you try something, guys, you're probably going to suck at it. Just embrace that.
Yeah, David and I both did. We both talked about this. We both sucked at first. That's normal. But I guarantee you, this magnum opus you're working on, that's your first novel you're just laboring over for 10 years and polishing to mirror shine, sucks. So that's okay. Soul Dancer, my Dragon Award winning fantasy horror novel, sucked in its first draft. You know what I did? I took it, I put it in a box in my closet, and I went on to another book. And finally, I went back and wrote a prequel, which my editor said was good enough to publish. So then I went back and rewrote my first novel, and I've learned so much in those years since then that it became an award-winning novel, right? So that is the road to professional quality. I've laid it out for you. All I got to do is put in the work. That's the hard part.
And this is exactly what I did with these books. So I wrote these books. These actually were not my first attempt at it. My first attempt at a book was so bad. I mean, I keep, it's like if you keep pictures around of like when you were really a cringy teenager, sometimes you got to look at them and be like, I have to remember not to be that. So my very first book was like about Crusaders and stuff. And I wrote that when I was like 19, and it was bad. Now this one I wrote was pretty bad too. And I wrote it, actually, I'll tell you how I wrote it, is that my wife and I were living in separate cities prior to us being married. We'd known each other for like 14 years at that point. So it wasn't like we were having long-term relationship. We didn't know it. No, we knew each other, but you know, I was living in Vegas. She was living in LA at the time. So I would send her like 1,000 words a day or something of this because she really liked the characters of the story in it when I shared the original one. But it was bad when I wrote really deep in this. And I realized, having grown through writing it, that it wasn't that good. So I took a break from it, went and wrote other stories and other books. And then I came back and rewrote it and re-edited it and heavily revised it. And now it's one of my most popular books. People really like this fantasy book. But I had to go and learn all the lessons on how to be good at what makes a good story and what's good execution, what's good prose, what's all that, all the little lessons, too many lessons to go over. I had to go learn those by writing more books before I could come back and make this book that my wife really loved into something that was really fun to read. So you can go back to your magnum opus and make it good, but first you're going to have to get some experience. You're going to have to do the reps.
Yeah, do the reps. Well said.
So, yep, do the reps, and that's how you're going to get it done. So that's my advice to people. And I think I've made that advice before. It's like, okay, you finished your book. Why don't you try putting it aside and write something new? Then when you come back to that book, because you won't have the skill necessary to know exactly what's wrong with it until you've written some other things. And if you were to pay an editor to look at it, the editor, it's not because the editor is bad or something. He may not know where to begin. It's like, okay, how do we get this into a publishable book? Well, if you're really honest, you might say, well, you're going to have to rewrite it because a lot of this is bad.
Yeah, I've had to tell clients that before because they need me to be honest. And glossing over the truth is going to serve anyone. And sometimes that's the answer.
I do have an original draft, and I can link. Maybe I could show some of it at some point.
Oh, geez.
I know Brandon Sanderson has done this with some of the stuff for Stormlight Archive. Is that he tried writing Stormlight Archive several times, but one of the times he wrote it, he realized he just didn't have the experience necessary to write the book that he was imagining, and he went and wrote other books and came back to write Way of Kings. And when he wrote Way of Kings, it was really, when he finally was able to write the book he imagined, it was very, very good. And I do still really like The Way of Kings, the first book in the Stormlight Archive series.
Yeah,
that's not as much, but the first one I think is really good.
Yeah, that is an amazing rush. Like, a lot of authors will tell you that writing the end at the end of a manuscript is the best feeling ever. Well, I mean, first of all, you're really not supposed to do that. That just like makes more work for your editor and formatter. But second of all, for my money, the biggest rush is going back to that trunk novel and realizing, oh, good Lord, this is hideous. Here, let me fix you. And then you do what Sanderson said, and you wrote it. You knock it out of the park on the second rewrite, and then you know, okay, yeah, I have attained the skill to realize my vision. Just realizing, wow, I've grown. This is how much I've grown. That's awesome.
Yeah, I see John in the chat. We should just get him in because he's always got a lot of good marketing stuff going. Deus Volt is still running too. I think
yes, it is. They're
close to 20K.
Yeah, they're getting close.
Let's see if we can get it to 20K. John, do you want to hop in? Let me see if I can find.
Yeah, I backed it, folks.
Wouldn't
ask you to do anything I'm not willing to do myself. So there.
There you go. Boom. Let's get this up. I'll show it to people. Bam. I'm actually really excited about this because one of my other good friends, Jesse White, is the artist on this, and he does a classic comic style, which this is actually a variant cover by Sashi, who does these kind of pinup covers in that digital style. But this is like a classic approach to inking. So if you like John Buscema or any of the classic Marvel artists, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, any of those guys, then you are going to like the art in this, certainly. And because John's writing the story, and they're doing what was called the Marvel method, which Marvel actually no longer does. But the Marvel method was the artist works from not so much a directed script, but what might be called a treatment or a synopsis. Like the same thing George Lucas would write before he handed it to the person who would generate the script for one of his movies. And then the artist would basically do all the art for it. And then the writer goes back in and puts in all the dialogue and the captions and stuff, kind of Mad Lib style. It's a weird way of writing, but it really produced a lot of success for Marvel in the 60s, 70s, and up into I think all the way into the mid 80s before they started to kind of adjust what they were doing and try different things out.
Yeah.
So I'll link that one for John.
Yeah, I think that went out with the Marvel method went out for good with Jim Shooter. John could correct me on that.
I think, Jim Shooter might have. I think he changed it to. I don't remember what he changed it to. He had a very significant editorial oversight of everything, though. So while he let writers kind of do their own thing, they had to do exactly what he told them to do. As far as like he would write, this is what's going to happen. Now go do it. And if they didn't do it on time or under budget, he fired them.
Yeah, and I love Shooter's approach. He really did save Marvel in the 80s there. And I meant that it went out when he was forced out because they muscled him out. Yeah, even though he was making money. Oh, okay. So
yeah, he had a different. He dictated the stories and stuff really pretty heavily. He had a lot of editorial oversight, more than what Stan Lee had or exerted, really, because he had a vision about how it was going to work, and he made a ton of money for the company doing it. He got forced out because the talent really didn't like working for him. Some of the talent really didn't like working for him. Yeah, also just would hand things to hand Spider-Man to Todd McFarlane and say do great stuff, do these things, and it would work.
Legend has it that John Byrne went around the Marvel offices the day that Shooter was fired, whistling "Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead" all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, they hated him.
Oh. He kind of went it, but when Jim Shooter was out, then it changed to an auteur approach, which was like these artist writers like Todd McFarlane or who am I thinking of? Who did X-Force?
Was that Rob Liefeld?
Rob Liefeld, yeah. So you had guys like that just doing whole comic runs. And that ended up creating, there was this collector's boom thing. It's hard to get into all the weird factors that affected Marvel and the comic industry at that time. But they ended up basically going bankrupt by the end of the 90s because of that approach. And then they turned around a little bit after some cash infusion and went to a writer-directed approach. But I don't think they've ever really recovered any kind of semblance of high quality that they had in the 70s and 80s.
No, because they shifted from being a comic book company to a brand management company. Yeah. Basically, Marvel turned into a DC has been since the 50s. And the money men said, well, like I was telling John on his stream the other day, we want to make sure that when kids see Spider-Man or Iron Man in a movie, that the version they see in the comics is the same, right? Mm-hmm. So we can't have any real permanent change, so there's no tension in the stories.
Yeah. That was, I felt that very strongly by the 1990s for sure.
Yeah.
And I think, that's one of the problems with American comics versus, say, manga or something like that. A manga artist is kind of an auteur in a lot of cases, or there's a team, like a two-man team, sometimes more, it just depends on what's going on there. But the manga comes to a close. It's a story that ends.
Yeah, man.
It's so nice to have an ending.
It is, yeah. It should have a definite beginning, middle, and end. But gosh, being a mangaka, that's art on hard mode, because they're expected to do everything. Do you know on average how many hours a week a mangaka sleeps?
I don't.
It's like 21 hours a week of sleep. That's it.
Yeah.
Because
Working
they're just
hard.
all, yeah. So you might get to be one of the top guys and might have the money and fame rolling in, but you don't get to enjoy it because you're just always working.
Yeah. This is another thing that people don't always realize about manga, but a lot of times they hire artist assistants, which will do all the inking and are just uncredited. But that's how you kind of get your start. It's like, I was an artist assistant for this manga artist, and here's my original thing. Maybe you get a shot that way. You learn the ropes by inking somebody's work uncredited, or, I can't finish inking this today. Can you just do backgrounds? Can you just draw backgrounds? Because I got to finish this other stuff, and that's kind of how you end up with a lot of mangas like that, is you have artist assistants that end up taking on big parts of the load because there's so much to do in a manga. Yeah. Is Berserk getting an ending? I would love for it to have an ending. We know what the ending needs to be, but I think it got into a decompressed story style basically by volume 13 or 14 that hasn't really shaken yet. It's like they need to get it. It needs to get a move on. Kintaro Miura needs to really get a move on and finish writing the thing.
It's probably taking a year off to go all Rumpelstiltskin mode.
Yeah.
Or sorry, Rip Van Winkle mode. Got my fairy tales mixed up.
Yeah, and I could see how it would just drive you nuts to keep doing that day after day, year after year, same character, same art.
Although he is good enough to spin straw into gold. I mean, his writing's that good, but yeah.
Yeah. American corporatism drives these stories that never end, and if they do, it's usually just dropped or a poor ending. And they do this like they'll have an alternate universe, where it's like, oh, Spider-Man dies. It's like, this was an alternate universe though, and here's the real Spider-Man. You just do that infinitely. They had a whole Spider-Man clone thing in the 90s that was just awful. It was just this awful story where you didn't know they kill Spider-Man, but he'd come back because it was a clone or a different, it was just so stupid. And then they had the whole Spider-Verse thing. It's like, it's an alternate universe. Can we just stop having alternate universes and have things come to a close? Can somebody die, or can somebody ride off into the sunset having accomplished their goals? You never get that good feeling at the end of comic stories anymore.
No, you don't. And again, it gets back to the death of real time at Marvel Comics in the beginning of Marvel time. So here's another story. Did you know that Stan Lee didn't know they were going to kill Gwen Stacy? He wasn't informed. He was out on tour. He was doing the con circuit or something, and he first found out about it from a fan in the audience during a Q&A who asked him what he thought about it. He's like, "What do you think about Gwen Stacy being killed?" And they should have just came out yesterday. And he's like, "What?"
What? What are you talking about? I think Jim Shooter also, speaking of Jim, he really didn't want those things because he's like, it needs to be like a soap opera. People will tune out if you kill a character. You have to keep the character deaths really few and far between. Marriages have to be really few and far between. It's kind of like that the Batman marriage thing. He was going to marry Catwoman, right? And I'm trying to remember how many variant covers they had. It was a number that I thought was so ridiculous it couldn't be true until I looked it up. I think it was 50. I think it was Batman number 50, and there were 50 variant covers to collect. 50.
Yeah.
This is just saying, you're a Batman fan? Give us hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Please. Some of those variants were really good looking, but of course he didn't marry Catwoman because Batman can't have a normal, well-adjusted marriage. He can't stop being Batman. He can't overcome the tragedy of his parents and be a thoughtful, good father or something like that.
He must punch the clown forever.
Yes, forever. It's like if these people were real, they're living in a hell. They're living they're in eternal purgatory at the very least. Yeah.
Now, in Shooter's defense, though, the shift to Marvel time had been going on for a while. Since the late 60s, even. You see it with Reed Richards. Well, he served with Victor Von Doom in World War II. Then it was Korea. Then Vietnam. Then Iraq. And they just keep moving forward. Tony Stark was injured in Vietnam, and then Iraq, and then Afghanistan. probably soon going to be around wherever. And it was because of the reaction to Gwen Stacy's death. Like, I think it was Martin Goldman, but it was one of the money guys who said, well, you can't let Peter Parker have like a steady girlfriend and be happy. Like, people like that. Just,
yeah.
It always rains. There's always a storm cloud over Peter. So we can't ever have him.
There's early Gwen or the early Gwen, what was her last name now? The early Gwen comics, which I have them. It's always like something stops Spider-Man from being able to like have a good relationship with her.
Yeah, that was on purpose. That was the money guys going, we need Spider-Man to never change. And so Stan Lee misinterpreted the backlash against Gwen's death. He learned the wrong lesson from it and said, okay, what we need to give people the illusion of change instead of real change. He kind of tried to come up with this compromise. So yeah, the route was setting in well before Shooter got there.
Yeah, I agree. Now I just want to address this. I didn't dislike the relationship between Peter and Miles. It's just I didn't really like Miles as a character in Into the Spider-Verse. And there was a lot of little things I didn't like about the movie that ended up adding up to. I don't think I liked this. It wasn't specifically the like Miles and Peter, but one of the versions of Peter, some version of Peter from some universe. And all the alternate universes, I'm kind of done with that as kind of a cop out in the, we're going to do the new 52. It's totally the same characters, but a new universe. And then we're just going to settle back into nothing changes. Like the best comics are ones that aren't part of the continuity. You notice that? It's like, this is Old Man Logan, takes place in the future where the Hulk rules over the world and is an evil character. I'm like, well, that sounds cool. Everyone liked this. It's like, but we can't have that be part of the continuity because people like Wolverine being this way. You know, all the best comics to come out over the last 30 years were like non-continuity comics for the most part, like weird one-offs, weird stories that aren't part of the official, canon.
Yeah, because they have endings.
Yeah. 90s Marvel was all about annoying, unintelligible crisscrosses of continuities. Like you weren't sure because everyone was a different team, but they were in a shared universe. You weren't sure if an event in one would affect another. A character would die in one, but he'd show up the next month in a different book. You know what I mean? It was just crazy trying to manage all that. Jim Shooter had a vision for a new universe that would do all that well, and it flopped. And that's one of the reasons he got fired. Is the new universe was just a complete flop. No one wanted to buy it. It's like if they just bought it, they would love it. Well, they didn't.
Yeah, it was a bold attempt, but I mean, yeah, all these properties have fallen into the hand of a fanatical death cult that hates us all. Mm-hmm. So, speaking of which, one thing you wanted to bring up earlier was the California public schools curriculum.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about this. So, I should put, someone mentioned Neil Gaiman. I also want to talk about Neil Gaiman. So I'm not sure which one to start with.
Oh, sure.
So
I've met Neil.
Let's start with Neil Gaiman. I think Neil Gaiman is, in general, a good writer. I think he writes good dialogue, and I think he writes good stories. A lot of people don't realize he basically wrote Harry Potter before Harry Potter existed.
Yeah, Books of Magic.
Yeah, the Books of Magic. If you go look them up, it's basically Harry Potter. It's like a teenage wizard with glasses.
It really is.
So you could go do that. So he's ahead of the curve on that. Neil Gaiman's someone who probably I have nothing in common with in terms of a view of humanity, world, or religion, or mythology even, but I don't think he's a bad writer, and I think he's pretty good at what he does. I liked Sandman. There's actually an audiobook of Sandman I wanted to check out that's like a kind of almost like a radio drama presentation of it. That'd be kind of interesting to look at. Now, what's interesting is they had an episode of American Gods. I guess they made American Gods into a TV series, which lets you know how much I watch TV, that I'm like, they made that into a TV series. And in it, there's 20 minutes of a gay trans orgy on film. And then the gods fight at the very end, I think. So I was laughing about this because here, I'll put it up over here. Here you go. American Gods praised for beautiful queer orgy scene that left fans in floods of happy tears. American Gods has captured the hearts of fans with a glorious jubilant queer orgy in its latest episode, with trans actress Dana Alaya Levinson singled out for particular praise for her performances as Tony. This wasn't in the book. I think the only gay thing in the book was like this gin.
And I think, that was only in the like a later edition. I think that was cut from like the original version too.
Yeah. Oh, the gay gin wasn't in the original.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think you might be right. But anyway, so this isn't in the book. So this isn't like people are going to see this like Neil Gaiman is like this horrible person who just like puts weird things. No, that's not in the book. But the showrunners, this is what happens: is the corporation buys a property and they wear it as a skin mask. Neil can't come out and say this is really weird and I didn't imagine this, because then he would get canceled from his own property the way J.K. Rowling is.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you want an idea of Neil Gaiman's character, he was besties with Gene Wolfe, like sci-fi grandmaster, new son, right? Sorcerer's House, Gene Wolfe, okay? And he attended Gene's Catholic funeral. And I know because I was there. Because
wow.
I lived, I grew up in the same town as Gene Wolfe, and I attended the parish school of the church where Gene was married. So I heard, and I saw his obituary in the newspaper and heard that, his funeral is going to be like right down the street from my folks' place when I happen to be over visiting. Like, I'll just walk over and like walk in the front door, and there's Neil talking to a small crowd of onlookers, like explaining like original pronunciation Shakespeare to them, like explaining this joke that only makes sense if you use the like actual original Elizabethan pronunciation. So, someone in chat asked what are his views on mythology. I think he basically eats, breathes, and lives it. Like, he's just always on, in my experience. Yeah.
So, anyway, he is married to Amanda Palmer, or was, and then they had a divorce. I don't even know. We're not going to really know what goes on in something like that, just so everybody knows. You're not going to know all the ins and outs, but he left her or something, but she was kind of crazy anyway.
Yeah, so that's weird business. I mean, the guy, like, both his parents were Scientologists.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And, like, they're Scientologist hippies living in England, but they sent him to Anglican parochial schools for the academics. And so he got exposure and actually attained a fondness for Christian theology while he was there. And then he read every book in his school library, and then moved on and read every book in his town library. So that was like his formation. So I mean, the guy knows his stuff. It's just that he never got that firm foundation or rock solid grounding in anything.
Yeah. Like he has a book that's like a retelling of Norse myth that I don't recommend. Like, it's written with good prose, but it's not, it doesn't do the myths justice or correctly, in my opinion. So that's just an example. I think he's a good writer. Now, so I bring this up because what's the point of this? Now, if somebody wanted to watch 20 minutes of a gay orgy, they only have to type in pornhub.com and type that into the search bar, and they will get as much of that as they could possibly want to watch. So there is porn is free on the internet. There's no restrictions on it. Everyone can see whatever depraved thing they want to see on the internet. Right? So that's a given. So why do you want to put it in a show? Is it that people want to see that? No, the point of this is to do two things. Number one is this is really playing up what I call the affirmation side, which is that people want to be told that what they do is good and normal. The other side of it is that people are already watching something. Again, it's like a skin suit thing. They're watching it because somebody else created it. You have their attention. Well, you're going to make them watch something that is disturbing to them or that they don't really want to see or they don't care to see in an attempt to either A, dunk on them, or B, try to normalize something which by its very definition is not normal. That's what queer means. So if something is queer, it is not normal. Basic definition of words, right? It's to try to normalize it or things like that. And that's what activists will say. Well, we want to normalize it. We want to, create more acceptance for it, this sort of thing. But when you stop and think about it, what consumers really are going to turn on a show that they think is a good show and then be forced to watch, not forced, but subject themselves to, and imagine watching 20 minutes of it too. Like it just keeps going on and on. It's like that car crash scene in Blues Brothers 2000, where it just keeps crashing, or like the vomit in Team America World Police, where like he's just vomiting and vomiting for like several minutes, and it just doesn't stop. When you think it's going to stop, it doesn't stop. That the point of that is to do it to you because you have your attention directed towards something else. You're there for a story. We're going to make you watch some gay porn for a while. And I believe that they can and will do this at the Super Bowl too. They'll have a bunch of gay kissing up front at the Super Bowl because that's what they want to do. They want to make people who aren't interested in that have to watch it, or maybe incidentally end up watching something they don't want to watch because they have your attention directed, attention from something else.
Yep. Why Americans gonna Weimar? That's where we're at.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just hate you. So of course they're gonna, and they hate straight white Christian Southerners the most. So yeah, of course they're gonna plaster it all over the Super Bowl. It's a big, it's a dunk. It's a humiliation ritual.
Everybody stand for the national anthem at this NASCAR race, and then they're just gonna focus on two dudes making out.
Yeah. They're just weaponizing all media against normal people because we let them get control of
it. Yeah. So do you think consumer will and desire have too much influence on the product? Are creators chasing fan wants instead of trying to lead the fans' desire too much? This is a great question. So it really depends which products I think you're looking at. I don't think consumer will and desire on the product is a bad thing. I think what we're talking about, like creators chasing fan wants instead of trying to lead the fans' desire, I think a lot of people are trying to do that too much. It depends if you are trying to really chase a trend and trying to make money off the trend, then you're probably doing that too much versus cultivating a fan base in a literary area that you're excited to write in. Like I think Brian and I could probably both make a lot of money if we chose to write romance or erotica. Brian might secretly write that for money, but why don't we I don't have a passion for writing romance. So I'd simply be doing it for money. And then I would probably hate myself for doing it because I don't, especially if I was writing erotica, which is something that I wouldn't want to write. I'd feel like a prostitute or something.
It's interesting. It's interesting you bring that up because one of my perks, like my platinum tier perk on my campaign, is that you get to commission me to write whatever short story you want. And I'm in talks with a backer who's thinking of getting that. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to make you write a romance story. And I'm like, okay, game on. So just to let you know, folks, if you were thinking about commissioning me to write a short story, there's only one on offer, and it's already in the process of getting snatched up. So you might want to claim that before it's gone. But anyway, back to David.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the point of this. I don't think it's bad to give people what they want. The other side of that question, which was, in some cases, the consumer will has no effect on the product. Consumers really want something and they don't get it. Now, there's examples of this, like you could look at Star Wars, but Star Wars is part of a broader thing, which is that there's no independent alternatives to $200 million movies. It's kind of hard to make an independent $200 million sci-fi extravaganza. You just don't really have the budget to do it. So there's plenty of alternatives in, say, the horror movie space that give horror fans exactly what they want, because you could make horror movies on very reasonable budgets. Much less diversity on something like superhero movies, because the bar is set so high in terms of production value, you can't really compete it. So even if Marvel movies are full of woke garbage, a lot of people will still go see them, even though it's not what they want, because there simply is nothing better that they actually want. Or and the other thing is that companies will happily lose money if it is or I shouldn't say the companies, the people who run the companies will happily make the company lose money if they are pursuing an agenda that they view as moral. The moral vision is going to, as Brian likes to say, the moral vision trumps the financial vision, or moral. I don't know, what did you say? What you're saying there? Moral vision.
Vision. One thing I say is that the only way to beat a moral vision is with a superior moral vision. And yeah, let's just rip this Band-Aid off. Here's what everybody misses, especially conservatives who are conditioned to think of everything in economic terms. Even when you tell them, like, okay, so woke capital loses money. We can see this in like Star Wars Diminishing Returns and Marvel. Not longer, like, okay. Yet companies keep doing it and show no signs of stopping. Okay, right? Therefore, they do not have a profit motive. Well, that's crazy talk, of course, the purpose of a company is to make money. Well, no, that's the purpose of a company. And that should tell you a lot that these companies are no longer pursuing the essential purpose of a company.
Yeah, the corporation may state that the explicit purpose is to make money, but the corporation is staffed with human beings, and human beings have a variety of motives. And one of their motives may not be making money with the company, but rather using the company's resources to pursue a different agenda.
Yeah, and this is a great springboard.
Okay? People are political, therefore companies can be political too.
Yeah, exactly. They're made up of people. And what these people want isn't money. They don't want power. They don't want anything reasonable. Here's what the people in charge of the megacorps want. They want to be seen as people who pursue a particular moral vision. They're fanatics. In like 1,000 years ago, these people would be shut up in nunneries and convents, so they couldn't hurt anyone else, right? Or they'd be sent on crusade. That's what drives them. They have a deep and abiding self-loathing. Okay, they hate themselves, and the last thing they want is any time alone with peace and quiet to think about how loathsome they are. So they project that onto other people. Therefore, they are always in search of a scapegoat. They're in search of an enemy to project their failings, what they hate most about themselves, onto. We can see this, right? Like, we're all familiar with the fact that these guys always project. Okay? That's the reason they do that. It's to relieve that cognitive dissonance. It's to relieve them of the burden of having to think about themselves. And this gets us back to outrage marketing. Because if you are basing your marketing approach, like I used to, folks, I know what I'm talking about, on like triggering the libs, on owning the SJWs, right? Mm-hmm. You are actually giving them exactly what they want. They want you to confront them, and it doesn't matter what you say. They just hear blah, 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 white supremacy, blah, 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 I'm Hitler, blah, 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 watch me put on these devil horns. They're fanatics in search of a devil. And when you give it to them, you release that tension. You're like an executive stress toy. They get to squeeze. They're not listening to what you say. So that is why it's a suboptimal idea to base your marketing around interacting with these guys at all. Because for one thing, you're just reinforcing their morality, right? If you don't get that they are crusaders for an unholy religion looking for dragons to slay, and you give it to them, all you're doing is validating.
Yeah.
So just don't do it.
Yeah, they invite you to put on the devil horns and jump out on the opera and sing to them about how you're going to entrap the good protagonists. Like, well, that sounds great. I'd love to have a part in the opera. And then like it's not an opera. They're going to say to the audience that you are the real devil.
Yeah, you're going to be standing there like explaining the principles of free market economics while the crowd jeers and throws fruit at you, and you don't notice.
Yeah. Yeah, what I say is you have to know who you're talking to. in any given moment. And one of the big lessons I learned is most people are not going to be convinced by arguments because they're not there to hear arguments. If somebody's there to hear arguments and to give arguments, yeah, you can operate on the dialectic level with them and have a pretty good time, but that's not most people. Most people are there to emote. And so you have to approach whatever you're going to do with that knowledge in mind. So yeah, it's like, yeah, I would not, it's like, you should, some people say this sometimes, you should get on and debate this person. Like, I don't really see any point in going on their show and doing that. That's just an opportunity for people to, harass me, and it's not a good opportunity. I'd only do it if it like really had a strong ability for me to like sell books out of it, or like persuade their audience. If you don't feel like you could persuade that other person's audience, you really shouldn't interact with them.
Yeah, you might get a sales boost for a little while, but the problem is if again your stated goal, like everybody in our thing says, is to defeat these guys, right? And retake culture, you're not going to do it by fueling the other side's morals. You're signing up to play with the Globetrotters at that point.
Yeah.
And like
what are they? The Washington Generals?
Yeah. You're signing up to be on the Generals to perpetually play games, to perpetually take a dive to the Globetrotters. Like Bradford Walker in chat is saying, yeah, the best thing to do is just withdraw and quarantine. Because you know what? What happens when they run out of mustache twirling conservatives to put the black hat on? They eat each other.
Yeah, they start eating, and we're already seeing that. We're already seeing that in the modern left. So yeah, I agree. All right, let's talk about California mandating that children worship the blood god of the Aztecs, because this is a good story. This was the one we wanted to talk about before we got sidetracked by Neil Gaiman. What time is it? We still have a little bit of time. All right. So if you don't know what's going on, there's a proposed change to California's school curriculum. Now, California, there's two big states, or there's three big states that determine curriculum for most of the other states, because they'll just kind of fall in line. California, Texas, and New York. And as one goes, if you can get two that go, they're pretty much all going to go that way. So next week, the California Department of Education will vote on a new statewide ethnic studies curriculum that advocates for the decolonization of American society and elevates Aztec religious symbolism, all in the service of a left-wing political ideology. The program, called the Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum, states, let's see here. In his book, Rethinking Ethnic Studies, which is cited throughout the curriculum, Cotton argues that the United States was founded on Eurocentric, white supremacist, racist, anti-black, anti-indigenous, capitalist, patriarchal, misogynistic, and anthropocentric paradigm. Anthropocentric, human-centered. Generally, that's what human societies are all about. I always find it funny. So what they're going to do is they're going to have the kids, let's see, where is it? Related to claiming that white Christians committed theocide against indigenous tribes, killing their gods and replacing them with Christianity. We're going to see that that's a good thing when it comes to this god. White settlers thus established a regime of coloniality, dehumanization, and genocide characterized by the explicit erasure and replacement of holistic I can't pronounce this word. Indigeneity?
It's not a real word.
That word. And humanity. The solution, according to Cotton and the ethnic studies curriculum, is to name, speak, resist, and transform the hegemonic, Eurocentric, neo-colonial condition. My God, they just love these descriptors in a posture of transformational resistance. This is basically jargon. This is leftist jargon, right?
It's ritual incantation.
Yeah.
The whole purpose of it is a litmus test, right? So if you nod along and reply with your own like intersectionalist academic jargon generated claptrap, then they know that you're one of the elect. You're one of them. You're in the in group. If you reply with anything else, they know you're put on the devil horns. They know you're an infidel, and that's all it's for. That's all it means.
Counter genocide. Does that mean genocide of the white race? Counter hegemony.
That's why I call them a death cult, folks.
Is that called being small? It's like, I mean, you're going to do some counter hegemony. You mean you're going to be small? That's what that literally means. Regeneration of indigenous epistemic cultural futurity. Whoa. Look at those words.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. So conservatives love to look at that stuff and chuckle at it. And yeah, you can do that if you want, but they're winning. They spew this just bat guano loco stuff, and they win.
Yeah. And so this is part of not playing the game. It's why I'm big on homeschooling here in the United States. Is that's not a cultural institution you can trust. It's controlled by people who hate you and will hate your children, regardless of what race you are. If you are a reasonably minded person, it's not just about white America. That's just where the focus tends to be. But if you're black and you have reasonable views, you'll be called an Uncle Tom, or like a, they'll have another word for you. That's basically means that you're the same as a white person because you say the things that white people say.
Oh, I've seen them call black conservatives white supremacists. It just,
we
got to get over this
idea. White supremacy or something.
Yeah, you got to get over this idea that their words really mean, they think of words as having set definitions. They don't. That's
there's an actual incantation they have to do. Speaking of incantations, actual incantation. I'm not going to read it here, but you can see it. They're literally saying words Panche Bay, repeating those. This is not something that is a part of critical thought. Repeating chants. They're not having your child do chants because they're helping them think critically.
Yeah.
Thinking critically involves thinking critically, not repeating Panche Ba.
Yeah, that's what was it? Alinsky pointed this out, but that's a thought-stopping tactic. Chants.
Repetition. Yeah. The point of repetition. So you can use this as a persuader, or you can use this as a writer. Repetition's a really useful device. It'll help people remember things that you're saying. So if you have a character have a saying that's said a bunch of times, like, you could probably think of a million of them from different movies, like, you feel lucky, punk, something like that. So anything that's repeated or said twice or more starts to become something that people remember. And you do this with music. You repeat sections, people remember it. So repetition's a very strong rhetorical device as well, because if people hear something repeated enough, they, just because of the way that we're raised, your mom told you the stove is hot because the stove was hot. And so you came to believe that the stove was hot. You never had to put your hand into the stove, into the flames of the stove to see that it was hot, or onto the heating element to see that it was hot. Your mom repeated it enough for you to know it. It's the same thing with this. You make the kids repeat it. And if you have to say it a lot, and if you have to tell it to other people, then it becomes completely internalized without ever having to consider the reality of it. It's a very, very, that's most of our education is by rote, despite what a lot of teachers will tell you. A lot of it is just repetition. Repetition can be good or bad. It depends on what you're repeating.
Repetition, redundancy, repetition.
Yeah. Tezcatlipoca. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Tezcatlipoca. I think one of these was the Aztec blood god that they used to actually sacrifice humans to. The Aztec Empire would go out and gather up victims and bring them to their capital, put them up on a pyramid and murder them to appease their god. And that was the tribute that they had to pay to the empire, was literally human blood.
Yeah. The Aztec religion was the closest any nation has come in human history to formally establishing devil worship as the official state religion.
Yep. Warriors of love. So much love when you take a poor rural peasant from northern Mexico and drag them off to your city and rip their heart out while they're still alive. So much love. Cortez was the good guy. Yeah. And so anyway, they're going to have kids say this. They're going to want kids to say this as a way to get in touch with. Now, here's the funny thing too. This is in America. This is in California, which is part of America. The Aztec Empire never extended to California. This is a foreign culture. This is not American in any way, shape, or form. It's not like you're even learning about the religion of the Pomo or something like that. Right? Let's learn about the myths of the Pomo and the Crow people they believed in. That's American. This is not even American. Is homeschooling legal in all American states? For now, I believe it is. The thing is that homeschooling is still overseen by the state using various accreditation methods that, I mean, it's still good as a parent. It's still better than sending them to public school, but you can't really escape the thumb of the state when it comes to a lot of this stuff. The best you can do is have control over your kids' education, be with your kids all the time so that they're not subjected to these devices.
That depends on where you are. Like my state, Illinois, is surprisingly hands off of homeschooling.
Yeah,
we can pretty much do whatever we want with it. Like we can at least weed out the death cold brainwashing.
A book fell over. Oh. Yeah. So in California, it's pretty hands off in general, but if you want accreditation, you have to go through various other organizations that will do assessment and things like that. And if you're going to a religious school, let's say, you're still dealing with accreditation issues at the religious school. They're going to have a really similar curriculum to what's at the public school, kind of by mandate. You also have teachers, in order to get a teaching credential, have to take, I know because I have a teaching credential, I'm a fully cleared credentialed teacher in the state of California, just so you know. In order for me to do that, I had to take a class on equity and diversity. It was mandated by the state. So I had to take an indoctrination class, a class on why public schooling is racist and sexist and homophobic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the way that they present the class is they ask you to write essays that just confirm an opinion written by someone who wrote a textbook, who, when you look deeper, realized didn't do any actual research into the American schooling system at all. He showed up to come to the conclusion that Black teachers were racist against Black students was one of the conclusions in this book that this researcher came up with. He observed a kindergarten class twice and had an assistant observe a first grade class twice for like 30 minutes at a time. And then just wrote a paper on it, and it got published in a peer-reviewed journal. And then it became enshrined as fact without anyone ever thinking critically about it at all. So that's the depth of research that occurs in the educational space when it comes to race relations and things like that. People's lived experiences are generally pushed to the side. If it's like, well, I was a Black student and I went to an all-Black school and I had Black teachers and they weren't racist against me. They just, they didn't let me talk when they were talking, right? That's internalized racism because you can't tell Black students not to talk when the teacher's talking. Anyway, so this is real. This is like some real stuff here. Very interesting.
Yeah, I'm just going to say it. I don't know how much more evidence people need. If you're not homeschooling, you're complicit in child abuse. And that's just what this is. That's just what it is. I mean, we got rid of Christian prayer in school, and we were told, well, that would lead to more inclusion. That would that would create a secular space where people can believe whatever they want. No, that doesn't happen. Human beings are hardwired for worship. We are worshiping beings. That's what we really are. So, anyone who thought, these big brain fedoras who thought that, well, we could just clear Christianity out of the public square and then just have a secular utopia, never going to happen. You're never going to have the United Federation of Planets. Okay, you're never going to have your shiny, sexy utopia. You get rid of Christianity, you're going to have child sacrifice and blood worship. Okay.
Yeah, my sci-fi future in Voices of the Void was the entirety of the various like interstellar organizations are still united by culture and ethnicity for the most part. In other words, there's like a Spanish, there's a Spanish interplanetary organization, like a Spanish empire of planets, and an English one. and they're not necessarily at war all the time, but they are different because they view themselves as different from other people. They have different religions, things like that. So I actually looked far into the future. I'm like, I don't think the differences between cultures are going to just go away once we get to space. Like that doesn't, more likely that they'll just end up continuing in different forms. Just like how cultures didn't go away when Europeans left Europe and went to North America and South America. They brought their culture with them. The Portuguese and the Spanish still had some significant competition. Just because they both happened to land in Japan didn't mean that they were suddenly, their culture ended over there. No.
Yeah. We're both on the same wavelength. The main premise behind Comet Frame Xseed is, well, let's just take all the economic, environmental, and cultural crises that are happening right now and just project them a few hundred years into the future, right? So I have in your total economic and social collapse happening in the backstory. But the other thing that I foresaw, which, man, history keeps proving me right, is that the heads of the megacorps band together, found their own space program, and escape the collapse on Earth. And what do we have but Uncle Elon building his own space program? So we're hurtling toward the Xseed future where, after the collapse, you do have a resurgence of distinct peoples founding their own homelands and people taking religion more seriously. So it's not all bad.
Yeah, that's kind of what I see in the future. And like it isn't all bad as far as I view it. Just like how I don't view culture as a bad thing. This is something that is often a kind of a weird thing about multiculturalism. It's not really multiculturalism. It's really the imperial view. It's imperial culturalism. It's the mega culture. And really they want to flatten all local cultures into one mega culture. One of the reasons they're making people chant Aztec gods is to flatten the localist culture of your church parish, to make people less Christian or less, less part of their normal religious and just their views that they inherit from their parents or that they learn from their parents regarding divinity, regarding religion, God, culture, things like that. So the point is to erase culture, not to have multiple cultures, because I evaluate things based on practice, not their words or their intent. Yeah, they call it multiculturalism, but it's really imperial hegemonic corporate culturalism. We're going to have one mega culture that includes all of these certain values like, transgenderism and these sorts of things. So really it's about erasing culture and making a new culture. And at the end of the day, the specialness of Tex-Mex culture won't be preserved and has no right to be preserved because it's not going to be accepting enough of some other thing that they believe should be part of the imperial culture. So again, the imperial versus localist. And I see in the future, there's always going to be localism. It always ends up finding a way. And what can't continue won't continue. So eventually you have to have some sort of collapse happen where things will split back off into more local cultures. Yeah.
And I honestly think this current paroxysm of intersectionality is going to burn itself out pretty fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to get like even a new evil empire like the Soviet Union, which lasted for like 70 years. But keep in mind, there were people who lived in Tsarist Russia who lived to see the Russian Revolution happen and the commies take over and lived to see the Berlin Wall fall down. That happened within one human lifetime.
Yeah.
So the Soviet Union really didn't last all that long. I mean, it did a lot of damage, but it lasted for a short period of time relative to how out of sync with reality communism is. Well, these guys in charge now make commies look like sober-headed sages who are totally grounded. So I don't think they're going to do better.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're right. And eventually, what can't continue won't continue. Just like any economic situation that can't continue eventually won't continue. Despite what they might try to do to continue it forward. It's the same thing with like, the US dollar in various versions. If you can't continue printing money forever and maintain value to it. So you're going to have inflation. You're going to have significant inflation because that's what always happens. It's everywhere and always a monetary phenomenon. If you print money, you're going to get inflation.
We're in super weird territory. I mean, how many economic benchmarks or irregularities that economists told us for years were impossible? Like, you can't have like a national debt that is like more than your GDP or something. I forget the exact metric, and like we passed it without comment like a couple months ago. So, but by all metrics, we should have already collapsed. It's like the get woke.
Yeah, we're in uncharted territory. There's no economic model that predicts woke capital.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting though.
Yeah, I agree. It can't go on forever. As you've mentioned before, because these guys have fellow travelers in the banking system and international finance, well, they can get all the loans they want, right, to leverage their IP values. So that's putting more gas in the tank. But yeah, I mean, it can't last forever because reality will just step in and smack it down. But the longer it goes on, the harder the smack is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. All right. I think we're starting to run out of time here. We're coming up on the 2-hour mark. Let's make sure we've plugged everything here. So here's a Comet Frame Exceed SS. There's still some perks here.
Yeah.
Like
Double S.
Sorry, I didn't get the t-shirt. I got the art for Deus Volt. I got the splash page art because I really like Jesse's art. So it's good to have stuff like this. You know, you can get a t-shirt and then I could plug Brian's book by just wearing the t-shirt.
Thank you.
So there's definitely still a lot of perks. I don't know if you've sold out of he usually has a perk that's like die in the book. Yeah. Be killed in the book. So this one was pretty popular last time, I think, was you could be killed in the book.
Yeah, we haven't sold out quite yet. That's probably going to be the next one to go now that the Build-A-Mech, which is our all-time favorite, has sold out. But yeah, Be Killed in the Book, there it is. Ton of fun, and it's me, award-winning horror author, so I'm not going to just like stab you or something. Okay, and again, this is in a book. This isn't real YouTube, but I mean, we've had like explosive decompressions, weird alien viruses,
getting spaced.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I'll make it interesting. I'll make it memorable. You will go out riding the atomic warhead like a bucking bronco.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So, and then, oops, that's not what you want. You do not want that one. You want this one. Whoops. You don't need to try to log into the BookFunnel dashboard. Here you go. You want the actual BookFunnel link. So City of Silver, that's a free ebook copy for people who want it. That's what people wanted. Somebody said City of Silver. Here you go. I'm working on book 3. Book 3 will hopefully be out as soon as I can get it. I've been very busy. My mother-in-law got really sick following heart surgery, and she died a couple of weeks ago. And so we've been dealing with the fallout from that. It's kind of set me back on a lot of productivity, kind of pushed me in some different directions. I actually played at her funeral last week, so I might try to record some music tonight, some of the music that I worked up for that. It's all Baroque music, and so I could probably put it out and just make it public domain, and people can use it for stuff they want. If you like, Baroque guitar music. So we'll have that going on. Last little question here. Any advice for actual atheists? Humans are religious beings. The problem, most atheists I meet are not really atheists. Rather, they replace a traditional religious belief in God or, some Buddhist belief in karma or something like that. They replace that with a different set of beliefs that they treat like a religion. So they treat wokeism like a religion, or they treat the state as a religion. They believe that the state is some kind of solution. They believe in communism as a religion. So I don't know how to tell people to avoid that other than know what religions actually are, study what actual religions are and the way they work, so that you don't feel inclined to believe in an idol as a religion. I talked about this in an article called Idols. People have this idol of democracy. They just believe democracy is good without ever really thinking about it. They have a religious belief in democracy, not a practical belief, not a well-reasoned belief, not a, I don't know what another word would be for it, but not a belief that just happens to be pragmatic. about the world. They believe democracy is wholly good and therefore we should spread it. Being a missionary for democracy these days means bombing brown people in the Middle East. I don't like that religion. Rather, I like the religion of offering people salvation from their sins and charitable works and missionary activities that way.
That's no, that was good. As a trained theologian, if you don't mind, I'll step in and actually offer some practical ways to tackle issues that David just expertly brought up, and he made a lot of good points. So, yeah, I hear from folks all the time who say, I'm an atheist, I'm agnostic. I recognize I would rather live next door to Christians, right, than anyone else, is basically what the realization comes down to. So just how do I get this? How do I get this faith? And the main stumbling block that I see is they seem to think it's supposed to be like a switch turning on or like a product they can buy or something, when really it's more like a muscle you've got to work out, guys.
Yeah.
Or like if
not everyone has a road to Damascus moment. I never had. I just like the faith accumulated over time.
Yeah, it is work, and I'm not trying to dip into Pelagianism here, but it's more like working out a muscle you've never worked out before, or if like you were born blind or something, then your sight's restored. There's going to be an acclimation period. So the number one thing that I've heard works from atheists who have had conversions is start by praying. And too many people put it backwards. They're like, oh, well, I can't pray until I believe. No, you've got to open up the dialogue. God won't force anything on you. He wants you to come to him like a child to his father. So you need to open yourself to him. So start a daily prayer regimen. Start out praying just like either when you get up or go to bed. You can just do the Our Father. You can recite a psalm. John C. Wright, my fellow author and sci-fi grandmaster, was an atheist for years, and he just composed his own prayer, which was like something along the lines of, "Dear God, I don't believe in you. However, I'm willing to accept the premise that I might be incorrect. So please provide me with evidence for your existence that I would find convincing. Thank you in advance, John C. Wright." And then the next day he had a massive heart attack, which was miraculously healed. So be careful what you pray for. But yeah, just start working out. Start working out that faith muscle, and it'll grow.
So anyway, thanks so much, guys. Thank you, Brian, for joining me. We always have a good, interesting conversation. Hope you guys will have a good rest of your day. Let me know if you guys want me to put out any free Baroque music. Let me know, because I actually bothered to practice it last week, so that means I could probably record it if I can get over my perfectionism and let there be a string buzz here or there. Then I'm sure I could put it out for free for you guys. And get Combat Frame Exceed SS. Get a free copy of City of Silver today, and I hope you guys will have a great day. Anything else, Brian?
Yeah, just want to point out that for new backers, when you back Combat Frame Exceed SS, all perk tiers also include the previous book, Combat Frame Exceed S. So you get to start at the departure point and come in on the new series from the ground level. So go back it now.
Okay. All right. Take it easy, guys, and we'll see you next time.